Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hmm. Good to see you. Hmm. You might take your time to see who's here today. To see you. Hmm. Wow. Yeah, it's great to see you. Well, I hope you've had a good week full of the range of joys and sorrows. Hmm. And I thought as we settle in for the sitting together today, just like getting to appreciate being together and receiving all of our intention to be peaceful and kind, compassionate. Is that's something that we all deeply share and value. And there's a power in that, a power in just being together, sitting together, and that we can actually receive that if we take the time. And within that, I think that finding that deeper intention, our deepest wishes for ourselves, this lifetime. Again, taking the time to experience that we really do want to be kind to ourselves, not harm ourselves. Care about our pain. Appreciate the joy in our life. And finding that deep acceptance of things as they are, at peace. And often when we receive those intentions, wishes, we often, it's easy to wish them for others, easier. That, of course, if we want to be free from inner and outer harm, we would want that for everyone on the planet, in the universe, all beings, invisible, visible, neighbors. Even an ant on the other side of the planet as us. It's that tenderness. And if we feel disconnected from that tenderness for ourselves and all beings, sometimes we just can touch our heart center to just feel connected to our heart, so we can feel tender toward any disconnect we feel or numbness. For ourselves and any beings that feel disconnected or numb. And that wish to be peaceful with whatever is happening in our lives. Peaceful and kind. Wishing all beings to be peaceful and kind with whatever is happening in their lives. And as we shift to our moment to moment experience, there's a power to that intention to be allowing rather than that knee-jerk reaction to whatever's appearing, or allowing of the knee-jerk reaction to what's appearing. And so often we start with sounds, hearing. As often there's that sense that it's easier to drop into that non-conceptual quality of awareness. Where we're just, again, making that kind of space for the flow of sound without controlling it. Just as it is. And there will be a flow of thoughts about the sounds. And we just include that as well. There'll be the thoughts about the sounds, and then the attention shifts back to the vibrations and textures, the direct experience of receiving the sounds just as they're happening. That flow of hearing itself. So much of this is not rushing and taking the time to just receive one sound. See if we can be with that sound as it's happening just for a while. So we get that practice of not having to fiddle with the sounds or manipulate or fix. get something out of them or get rid of them. The silence, the sound. It's that ease of well being where we're connecting just with what's happening without trying to control it. And as we shift to our fathom long body, you can come back to the sounds. You shift maybe to your hands, noticing the different sensations, just like you have been with the sound. So we can have a visual image of our hands, a past memory, a past memory of my hand. Those thoughts or images come and go. You just bring your attention back to that non-conceptual flow of sensations just as they are. Even if it's just a few moments of receiving some changing texture at the tip of our thumb. With the movement of the breath very close to our hands and our abdomen. We can play with the lens of our awareness. We can have that vast open field of awareness where we are observing this movement from a distance. The lens can be more from the outline of our body, or sometimes the lens can be right within the breath itself. The awareness connecting with it's like the swell of a wave, riding that wave till it disappears. And you probably notice the visual images will keep coming and going, or the sense of it being mine, or I, or me. You just notice that happening. And just notice air. It's just air coming and going by itself. Just movement, like the wind. And continuing with this, with just your moment, at times your moment to moment flow of experience, sounds, sights, smells, tastes, body sensation, thoughts, emotions. You'll notice thoughts about it, images, past memories. You just let that come and go, and you drop into receiving the textures and vibrations of moment to moment experience, just as it is, not having to get anything or get rid of anything. With that, allowing, kind, connected, but not controlling as best we can how things are. So if you have any questions today about your practice, we would love to hear them.
Just a reminder, if you have a question, the easiest way, like Samantha just did, is to go to the reactions button on the bottom, where you can raise your Zoom hand. Or if you have a question and that thing doesn't work, you can just type in the chat that you have a question. We'll call on you. Samantha. Oh, let me make sure you can unmute. There we go. Now you should be able to. Great.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Jesse. I had a question, I think, about prayer and faith. Michele, you mentioned in some talks before, you talk a lot about Vipassana. And once you said that she said to you when she was departing, that she'll always be with you and with us. And that, I know you're very connected with your space and that you still can feel her presence at times. And you pointed to, I don't know if it was northeast or northwest. Can you describe how that feels?
I mean, I still have a visual image of her in my mind when I think of her. So I don't, I don't think she looks like that anymore. So it's not that when I have that image come, usually when I think of her, that image comes. Of course, I think we all know that somebody who's died and we know them, we will still have the image, but then we know that they're not in that particular form anymore. I have such a I think that it was so clear that she had in this tradition reached third stage of enlightenment, that it was so clear that she had that greed and aversion, desire and fear and aversion had been uprooted. That and I knew that from what I knew up to that point that she said goodbye, I knew that she had been attempting to reach full enlightenment. She was really amazing. She didn't rest on her laurels by any means. And my understanding is that that didn't happen. And my understanding is that after she died, I could really sense that she was in a certain heaven realm. That's what I can share. Of course, that's just my experience. I can't say what's true and isn't true. And so when she said, "I'll always be with you," I always understood that to be also that she had said the Dhamma is everywhere. And so the Dhamma is what is left when, and it's not like none of you know that experience. When greed, hatred, and delusion aren't present, what is present? Well, the Dhamma is present. So we all know that experience. And so that essence of the Dhamma feels like that's what I sense when I think of her now, even though at times I'll have that visual image. And I don't have the sense, when I point, of course, that's sort of where I sense her, but really I sense her in here, in my heart, really. So it's like that visual image or or direction, but also when I get quiet enough, when I just drop into my heart center, she's actually that feeling of the Dhamma essence is there. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, yeah, very. And I ask because, like I said, prayer, right? And I don't know, it's not something we emphasize a lot in this tradition. But for me, it feels like a prayer. I mean, even when we say may I be happy, that sounds like a prayer to me. And it I guess in the last few months I've had conditions in my life that I could sit more, and in the last few weeks I had done a lot of sitting, and I've noticed that when it gets really hard, when the practice gets really hard and so sticky, I tend to kind of gravitate to those memories of being connected with powerful beings, including you guys, all of you. But like I had the fortune, thanks to you, Michelle and Steve, in the 1990, I think I sat a monthly Pandita in IMS, and just being in his presence was extremely transforming. But just connecting with that through that, right? I don't know if it's abiding in their goodness or in the Dharma that they exude. I guess I'm asking for permission to pray. I don't know. Because it is something.
No, no, just kidding.
It's something that brings me back to the guardrails of sila, samadhi, and panya. It's something when I slip, the prayer just brings me back, and I guess I'm asking for permission to pray. Okay.
Jesse, do you want me to go next, and then
Yeah,
you
I mean,
go?
I
Or
do
do you
have
want?
some things
Yeah,
I'll offer, but you
yeah.
go keep
I
going.
think
You're
you
on, yeah.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one time when I was in Greece, the one I think the one time I was there, this person said to me, I think I asked, "When do you pray?" And he said, "I pray when I'm glad, and I pray when I'm sad." And it was so simple, like, and there was no other discussion. That it was the Greek Orthodox Church, and I feel like the human spiritual heart that will feel that yearning. The yearning is good. Like the yearning is not a bad thing to seek help at a time when we're needing it, or to thank when we don't. That I think that's the more we understand the motivation, of course, the more helpful, right? So we can pray out of extreme aversion to everything, and of course that's okay too. It's not like it, but it's like learning what's motivating it, and I think we know that when we are connected with the Dhamma so deeply and we're peaceful with that, often we don't need to pray, right? There'll be a feeling that we don't, and so it's like also making space for that. Like it's making space where we don't feel there's no resistance to anything whatsoever, and so there's no need to reach out or reach in. We're not reaching out, reaching in. There's a deep abiding in that peace. and and so I think it's very important, and you see the way we offer the teachings that say we're feeling like we're really controlling reality. You don't go, don't do that. We just, you step back and you explore what that feels like, what's motivating it, and you understand. You come to that understanding. There's nobody controlling. There's just controlling, right? And so there's that sense that there's nobody who's praying, there's just praying, right? There's levels to understanding that. And certainly there's that spectrum of when we pray when we're sad or glad, and then there's really that sense when we often are offering prayers for others or ourselves. We know people are in deep trouble and really needing that sense of connection with goodness, like, and with that it's, somewhere, somehow this is impermanent and it's not going to last, and that there is so much actual spiritual help, but we've lost control, we've lost it. And so that extreme again of the spectrum of when we pray is really important to maybe revere, maybe revere, not just respect, or revere and rejoice in. Yeah.
I think just to kind of add on, that it's like we definitely feel very clear that like anything that helps us connect with these beautiful qualities of heart and mind, that we talk about all the time, or the potential for liberation, any kind of method or practice that helps us with that is really important, and like really beautiful, and has a place in our spiritual lives. And that may be something that's like a kind of formal method that you see within, the kind of Theravada and Buddhist world, and it may be something that comes from our other traditions and our own cultural contexts and realities, and they don't need to be at odds, but it doesn't. But it's important too to see that we have to be careful, right? That there are times where things are at odds, and it's like what is the quality? Can we bring the wisdom of the Dhamma to whatever kind of prayer we're doing? Because within the tradition, there's plenty of, even just with the Buddha, or this reflection on the virtues of the Buddha, right, of all of his beautiful qualities, is like a classic practice, right? And that, so there is this way of kind of reverence and honoring this other being's awakening, and that as inspiring for us is really, fundamental and built in and honored. Doing that for the Sangha, not just the Buddha, right? Doing that for the Dhamma. So there's all kinds of formal practices along that. I think it's like we have to be careful that we're not doing that in a way that personalizes the liberatory capacity of anybody, right? So it's not like the Buddha's having done this excludes us from it, or right, or that it's like that we're so devoted to this other person that we imagine as being really awakened, and that devotion and that honoring somehow is neglecting our own capacity for it, or our own responsibility for our own awakening, right? So it's like where you have to be careful of, like, it's not just kind of projecting onto someone else, but that when you can feel, for example, the worthiness of the Buddha to have been awakened, that process is one where you also are attuning to your own worthiness, right? It is not simply an honoring that it belongs to someone else, or that it belongs to us. That there is this way that all of these beautiful qualities of generosity and compassion and awakening, wisdom, at their maximum, they're not owned by anyone. They aren't part of anyone's identity. That when they're in their fullest bloom, they're unowned, and that means that we're not excluded from them, and but then you have to be careful of, like, what in other traditions might be like the sort of salvatory, like the salvation of prayer, right? That it's actually through someone else's goodness that we're liberated, that is not really the framework, right? That we can be inspired from it. We are not, but that we're not excluded from that, and that ultimately it is our own responsibility to achieve that liberation and to realize that awakening internally, and so that's just really important to recognize, to be careful of like, are we somehow in honoring and recognizing it in someone else, are we sharing in that, or are we sort of like diminishing ourselves in that? And to be very careful about that. And then the other side of that is where is it like a kind of petitionary prayer that we are asking for something to be, this sense of like, may all beings be happy, may all beings be safe. It's not really the idea that through our wish for this, that's going to happen. It's recognizing that if we were to wish for that, that would mean something really beautiful in our hearts, and we're trying to feel that feeling, right? We're trying to be like, what would it be like to really wish all beings well, and how beautiful that is. It's not that by doing this we have the power to liberate all beings. So that you have this other side of it as being like the identification with the power of the mind for ourselves or others. That's also dangerous, right? That through my prayer, I have the power to do something, or my mind has the power to do something, or someone else's power through someone else. There's a power that is also a form of identification, right, and ownership that we have to be careful of. So it's just that to say that, of course, it's like anything we use, from whatever helps us feel a connection to goodness, especially when we're not feeling connected to it, right? When we do feel a sense of not our worthiness and not our ability to do it, that we can see that it's possible in other people, and that we have refuge in that, we have reference for that, and that's inspiring. But it's also not like something we're using to neglect our own capacity and responsibility for it ourselves. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. We need all the help we can get, as Michele says.
Yeah, I would also just add, when say somebody is in the hospital and you're wishing them well, it's not that, like, I think it's important to know that is very important for both people. It's like the person who's receiving it and the person knows they know that you're sending it, it's really powerful. Like there is something happening there, and when you feel like you're wishing them well, there's a connection there that I think is important, and important whether someone knows or not. I just think that, of course, what Jesse's saying, there's not the power to liberate in that, but there is the power to help um, someone feel again their own goodness and their own sense of worthiness, and so that's important just for all of us to remember, etc. There's lots of reasons to send metta, not just someone in the hospital.
Let's see, Rose, and then Sven.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Rose.
Sometimes when I'm meditating, I feel like I'm in the movie Inner Space. I don't know if you know it. It's like Martin Short and Dennis Quaid. And like Dennis Quaid gets injected into Martin Short. He was supposed to go into like a rabbit to like do like, I don't know, sciencey stuff. And he realizes like, I'm not Bugs Bunny, And he's just like right there, like in the body, like the fluids, the flow, the intensities. And Martin Short's like having like panic attacks and emotions and stuff. And he's like trying to calm him down because he's like, whoa, because like, so it's just, but it just reminds me of like the fluids, the textures, like the elements, like the flow. And he's not in a thought stream. It's just like direct kind of experience. And he's like, I don't know, he's hanging on. And like, I've been exploring my tinnitus a little bit, and it feels like that a little bit, like where am I? Like I'm in here in the body system. And I know, Michele, you said, don't use this as an anchor. It's not neutral. I get it, but here it is. The experience comes up, explore it a little bit because it's like going to be with me, right? And I've been exploring it And it's interesting. Sometimes it does feel neutral. I'll slip right into it when I'm slipping into my breath, whether my mind just goes there or for whatever. And I'll find myself conceptually thinking, like, is it like that might be causing the aversion? Like, you're not supposed to like this, or this is not supposed to be good. And but then sometimes I can't find the aversion. It just feels like I'm in the flow of experience. And I guess when maybe conceptually, if I've done that to myself, think of it more like twinkling stars. And so it's like it's like you're in the flow. And in a way, like what you were saying last week, Jesse, being in like the moment to moment experience can be a little bit of a relief. And when you're in the tinnitus, like I feel like you can perceive the falling away, because it's like it almost feels like what I'm picking up on. It's like it's like the echo in my back of what was, but it like keeps happening, and that's kind of like what it feels like. So and then it's funny, I'm like in there, but it's like, is this a sound or is this like a vibration? And I can't tell, and I'm not a neuroscientist, and I know this stuff's like super subjective, but it's like, is it sound? Well, because we're talking about the vibration door, or is this just like a vibration I'm sensing? And it's just sort of hard to kind of hard to tell, but it's interesting. I mean, I guess it's nice that I have tinnitus and I'm not like flipping out when I'm, you know, in there. May that continue. That's all I
Yeah.
have to say, a little bit of the experience.
Can I say something about the anchor part of it, and then Jesse,
Yeah.
we'll take
Yeah.
back and forth. But that the idea, um, if you hadn't listened to that and you had made it your anchor, you wouldn't be having the experience you're having now. And I
But
want you
like,
to really take that in, because if you make something like tinnitus your anchor, then it becomes more and more of something that's predominant. It increases, and you aren't able to be with that moment-to-moment experience because there's a habit, there's a groove in the practice, and you're not getting any space enough to even explore it. You're getting pulled more and more into it. And so that you have gotten to the point in your practice that you aren't getting pulled into it so that you can explore it, I feel is like you actually followed the instruction.
I like what you're saying though, like be mindful of the fact that it's not my anchor. I'm not like getting the groove of that because it's not a neutral anchor. And then I am able to kind of explore it, not identify with it, and just kind of perceive what
Right. The
I'm able
more,
to kind of detect about it. Okay.
the more it isn't your anchor, the more you're going to be able to explore it. Isn't that
Okay.
fun?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so, Jesse, I'm sure probably have more, but go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true with anything that's, I think part of what you're seeing, this notion that it's like, oh, maybe it isn't so evocative. Maybe it is more neutral than you thought. And so, um, the warnings about its lack of appropriateness as a primary anchor are kind of a range, right? Where it's like it's not just that it's unpleasant. Well, most people find their tinnitus unpleasant, and it's very wrapped up in a lot of like sort of self beliefs and beliefs about the worries about the future and health, and so it's too entangled to sort of see clearly as like a primary place. But also because something like tinnitus it can be often very difficult to see the change, right? That it seems very steady and solid and consistent. And part of Vipassana is that, like, you're trying to observe the changing nature of whatever is happening, and that indeed everything is changing, but it can be harder to see. So I think, just to kind of say again, really what Michele just said, in a way, it's like that you didn't use it as a primary anchor, but also aren't excluding it from something that you can therefore also explore, that it gives you this access of like, oh, maybe it's not always unpleasant, and that there's neutral, and that there's maybe qualities of the concentration that arise that are interesting, and those are pleasant experiences, or that you're not at war with it. You have a sort of like a different place to find your base. You come to it and you do see the changes, and you are seeing the kind of arising and passing, and this question of like, well, actually, what is this? is a really important question, you know. I mean, just to say careful around, like when we call something a when we use the word vibration, we are tending to still mean that in terms of sound, that it's like a physical vibration at the eardrum, right? That is a sound. And and my understanding of tinnitus, because I also have it, I've talked to various, you know, and read and talked to doctors about it. It's like, it depends. There are some tinnituses that are really just neurological. It's like your mind is making the sound in the empty space, and they're not sure why it does it. There's other ones that are actual physical sounds that have to do with like blood flow and things like that that are picking up, and sometimes dysfunction and some inner ear things. So just the notion that you're interested in it is like cool, and that you can see that, like, what's the difference between thinking of an image and seeing something visually? And when you're imagining something, it's like, well, is this seeing or is this thinking? You know, or the tinnitus, like, is this hearing or is this essentially a thinking, a sound? Is this a song, like a song in our head, right? Is that hearing or is that a thought? It's just interesting, you know, and you don't have to come to resolution. And that would be the only one thing I would say. The other thing to be careful about, it's like tinnitus or your heartbeat, right? Another thing that's like not recommended as being like a primary object, which doesn't mean we don't explore it if it becomes predominant at times. There are other things, but it's like, when do you start to feel, just to be careful, it's like, when do you start to feel like, oh, something's gonna shift, or you're like, if you keep following this, something is like gonna reveal itself, like you're gonna untangle something by kind of exploring this, and it becomes a kind of project, right? This sense of like, oh, you've gotten to a new layer of it and something else is sort of unfolding, and you start to see that essentially there is a grasping. That's all.
Like
It's
a
not the end of the
striving.
world. But yeah, but you see that you're waiting for some next experience, some next moment, right? You're like, oh, if I kind of listen, then something is going to shift. Or I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just saying this is the tendency around this type of thing, is there's a leaning into some future moment that might be around the corner that's going to be revelatory. And you just have to get that that's just wanting. That's like, it's no big deal, but it's not settling back into this sort of equanimity with the present moment. And we do that with all kinds of things. We could do that with the breath. We could do that with our primary anchor. But to be careful of like, when does a sort of like kind of somewhat interesting or fascinating, strange object of attention become something of like a project that we're involved in a way where there's like an expectation that it's going to lead to something, because guarantee it doesn't lead to anything. Like that is a mirage, right? That there's this thing around the corner, and we just have to unhook from it. That's all, you know.
Yeah. It's like nothing special. Okay. I got it. I hear it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great, yeah. And before,
And
Michelle, before you go, I just
yes.
I want to just clarify this. Clint is like, what
Oh,
to anchor? This
okay.
language we use around the anchor is kind of this idea of, when we're meditating, that we have a primary object of attention. Sometimes we'll call it the anchor. So whether that's like the rising and falling of the breath, or just sensations in the whole body, sometimes we will use just sound as like our primary anchor, is kind of the language we use sometimes, of like, it's not that we're excluding everything else, but there is this notion that there's a primary place where we're going to keep bringing the attention back when we wander, as a place of exploration. So that's the idea.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michelle.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Sometimes I like the word anchor because if you get a sense of like an actual big boat that needs an anchor, and you think of like when the boat goes out to sea and it gets disturbed or choppy or whatever, but it's been out there too long, whatever reason, it's time to come into the harbor. And so with a human mind and body that is up against a lot of inner obstacles, the idea is that there's a flow of moment-to-moment experience at the six sense doors that's happening all the time, but that it's hard to pay attention to that with any kind of awareness that's clear. And so the idea of cultivating, it's that you cultivate this anchor as just like going into a harbor. Like you're cultivating a harbor, actually. That's how it's so powerful. So that wherever the attention is getting caught with aversion or attachment, it's sticky, delusion, you start to recognize that you're lost at sea and it's time to come back to the harbor. So it's really creating this very powerful safe space to gather oneself again and to connect and to feel tranquil. The idea is that it's calming, it's tranquil, and it makes for the ability to actually go out to sea again, to explore. So that's the two things. You're exploring, you're out to sea, you're in the harbor. You're exploring, you're in the harbor. And that becomes less and less rigid. It can be happening like moment by moment. So it can become very seamless, or at like every few seconds, or it can become very like much more like, oh, we're way out to sea exploring, or we're really needing that protection of the anchor a lot, a lot. So that's sort of the idea of it.
Mm-hmm. And again, just it's the one, just the rising and falling of the breath, or just the sensations in the body, one field of awareness. Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to mention, but it's not that exciting really, but I think that all of us know what it's like to be kind of walking along the road, and there might be a quietish, even cars going by, but you hear birds and you hear human voices, and then this like massive truck goes by, like a huge truck goes by, and the sound of that truck, if you're paying attention, will usually appear, you can feel it in your body. So what we call sound, I'm just kind of responding to Rose's tinnitus thing, but it's like, I think Jesse's question, what is a sound, is really important, because, vibration, texture, what is a thought, what is a body sensation, that what brings about more of a sense of equanimity and peace is that you start to understand that it's all just texture and vibration, and that you, when you have that truck come, it's such a great place of insight, because like your whole body's vibrating, right? And what is that? Is that a sound? Is that the sound of the truck? What is it? Like, I'm not landing anywhere with it, but it's really fun. It's a fun place to explore, especially when they hit a puddle and it goes all over you. Like it's a great place to explore. That's all. Yeah.
Before Kristen, Sun, did you have a question? Yeah, you took your hand down. Oh, see, there you go.
Yeah, like about Vipassana, I still remember Michele telling Vipassana would go in the zoo and she would gently tap and send metta to them all. So like whenever I do metta, I just think of Vipassana and tune into that place. And it seems like, for me, like even though Vipassana is gone, but her metta is still valuable to me.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I never met her, but that's similar stories, and that Michele or others tell of, like, just this idea that she just blessed everything. It's like that's such a good practice. Like, and do we feel like we can do that? Like, that we don't have to be third stage enlightened to be able to just feel like, oh yeah, every person we walk by, the chair we walk by, that we're blessing it. And there's something beautiful in that. Yeah, a good way to live.
Sure. When you think about happy and peaceful of heart, Deepama was happy and peaceful of heart because of the metta. The metta was very strong. Yeah. Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
Hello. I'm trying to offer support to someone has kind of overwhelming multiple stressors, and just recently found out that unexplored early trauma is there as well. And sometimes like this practice feels like it's so much for the adult mind. And I'm wondering what kind of guidance and support I can offer from a meditative place, from the Dharma.
That's a great question. I think that I remember in my early practice remembering really early childhood abuse, and I would be seeing like that I was trying to set that aside. So I would, this was way back in my practice. So like I wasn't that interested in the emotions. So often when you talk about early unexplored abuse, you're often talking about some pretty intense, difficult emotions that are buried for a reason. They're buried for a good reason. And so you don't necessarily want them to come up really quickly, but you want to have them come up in a way that the adult part can start to connect with and understand. But as they can come up from the perspective, of course, as of the child. And so I think that at first, it's recognizing that. It's actually helping someone even recognizing that that's what's happening. And that's huge. That's a huge thing to recognize that, oh, the adult is actually not gone, right? Like there's no adult present. That's helpful insight. And then I would be trying to do lifting, moving, placing, like really, microscopic attention. And I would be pushing that part away, thinking that that was good practice. And I don't recommend that at all. I recommend, like when you recognize that that's what's happening, you go, well, what's skillful means? So it's all skillful means. Like what would be helpful right now, and that the most helpful thing to do is if you can get a relationship with that part, because it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be loneliness. It's the same stuff, but often it's terror or rage or more intense emotion, panic. But it's really again helping someone meditatively. This is not out of the context of any kind of meditation. It's like you kind of have a part that can, you don't necessarily call it the adult part, but you certainly can. You can always have an awareness that can say to oneself, "Wow, I really want to take care of that part," and then to listen to what that part wants. So you're trying to cultivate a relationship with that unexplored abused part, and you can do that through meditation. I'm explaining it like it's like you try to find a part that can recognize again. You can recognize that you're afraid when you're 2. You need help witnessing it. You have to get a witness, so that the witness is the same in it's mindfulness, but you have to kind of get that you're not pushing to do anchoring. You're letting go of the anchoring and sound. Sometimes you can use that. You don't want to stay. This is not like you do 5 hours of this and 5 hours of that, or 2 hours of this or 2 minutes of that. You tend to be like getting a question, what would be helpful, and then you might like ground with the bottom of your feet, and then maybe listen again, what would be helpful. And sometimes that might mean getting in bed and pulling the covers over, or it might mean reading a fairy tale, or it might mean getting a cup of tea, or it might mean reaching out to a friend or taking a bath. There's many things, but it's like at that point you're letting that young part have a voice, and not expecting that young part to be perfectly mindful and equanimous. You're bringing in all the Brahma Viharas without necessarily saying, "May I be happy and peaceful," but you're creating a kind, safe container where you're actually interested in what that part needs, so that that part can be connected with kindness, care, mindfulness. All that comes in. But the approach is through the young part. The approach is making sure you're not excluding that part and listening, and then getting the awareness to connect with it, which is not, it's not like the adult really does go away. So it's not like it's a permanent thing. It's more just that when that unexplored abuse comes up, it usually comes up intensively, and what's remembered is that there wasn't a witness at that time. And so you keep trying to bring the witness and the young part together. And when you can't, you get help. You ask for, you call a friend, or, blah, blah, blah. I can talk about this for like the next 25 hours, but that was the short answer. Sorry, I probably went on and on, but yeah.
This person was not me.
I figured.
Is in such a trauma state that they're just trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what to offer except to take a breath and to say something that they need to say to themselves. So it's like, I think what would be useful is something that's more elementary somehow. What you described, Michele, is really good, I think, for someone who has a meditative context that's quite.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but because like taking a bath is about as elementary as it can be, and eating food is about elementary as it can be, and getting help, getting somebody to come over and be with you, like if they're on survival mode, it's like there's like things that actually, when you say survival, that means that that person is actually making it through the days. And how they get through the days is going to require finding out, well, does reading a fairy tale help or not? Does sleeping in bed under the covers help? Or does going outside and being under a tree? Or do they need somebody with them all the time? I'm not suggesting that you're actually telling them what I'm telling you. I'm saying that that's the idea. The path is that you get somebody safe and 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 safe. And how do you create that safety? Well, it could be that you say, try to take another breath. I mean, this isn't, it's not rocket science, but it takes a relationship with this person. You can't just tell the person that once. It takes like somebody's going to have to really help this person. They need help, and they need someone to like care. They need to feel cared about, and that they're going to, if they don't feel safe, that they will feel safe. And there's a lot. That's, like I said, it takes 25 hours to talk about something like this. But it certainly requires, the most important is a relationship with somebody who's done it. You've done it. You know what to do. But it's friggin' hard.
I think that's all I really was going to encourage also,
Yeah.
Kristen, is just, for us to tell you what to tell this person we don't know and wherever they are, it's just, I think what Michele said is like to take that in as really important, of just like safety, comfort, protection, whatever ways that might do. And then a lifetime of how one explores it and, tries to learn from it and heal and work with it is a whole, is a lifetime. But I do think that your own kindness, right? I think the dynamic, and what Michele's pointing to, is like when we're in shared space with someone who's going through really evocative, difficult things, because we're humans, and the part of the beauty of it and the hardship is that it is going to trigger our own things, right? Someone else's pain and our response to that, and someone else's trauma and our response to that, and our trauma, and it can get very complex. And that sense of where being a good friend, where part of that means also like kind of relying on your own practice and seeing that it's like, oh, you have the ability to be with what arises for you when you experience yourself next to this person and their pain, that they don't have the tools to not be afraid of their fear, but actually that you don't need to be afraid of their fear, or like you've done enough work that you're not afraid of their fear, and that's incredible. To be with someone who's terrified and not be terrified is a very beautiful gift, right? But you're still connected, that you're still engaged, that you have access to caring and compassion and some clarity of mind. That is like, it's not words, it's not method, it's not like a technique, it's just your practice coming to fruition. And I think that is going to be the most important thing, right? Of like really realizing that, okay, you take care of your own heart, mind, body in response to what this person is going through when you're with them or on the phone with them, and knowing that like your ability to do that makes you a more connected, stable, caring friend. And that friendship, whatever this person's path looks like in the future, friendship that is not recoiling away from them, that can be with them through the ups and downs, and probably the parts that are very difficult to be with in terms of someone's behavior. Sometimes it's like that sort of peacefulness, that stability, that compassion, the sort of that between solidity and emptiness, that's caring, is the most important thing. And then whatever little things in terms of a cup of tea or a bath or just, physical touch or no physical touch, is like, it doesn't matter. It's just the caring, and your ability to be in the space with her, I would say, is going to be the most important thing. Yeah.
I think I would like comment on like that. There have been questions about Deepama, but Deepama is to us as you are to this person right now. It's like really important to know that the questions all about Deepama in some ways are the same question about this to me, that you will be that person's witness because they can't witness it yet. But the way to find how to witness it is through somebody helping us witness it. But that's not necessarily at this point, as Jesse says. I love what Jesse says. It's not through words, and it's like it takes so much trust that they will learn from you non-conceptually. Because the early abuse is all non-conceptual. It's like they're learned to witness it through your ability to witness it. That's what Jesse's saying.
That's very helpful. And I feel like I am able to do that, like to provide the stability and safety that is not being experienced. And it just, initially it didn't feel like enough, but I understand what you're saying, and that is enough at this moment. Yes, thank you.
It's really beautiful. Thank you, Kristen. Julia, did you have a question? You disappeared there.
Thanks for noticing. Thanks for all this. I did raise my hand because, I finally have my own place again, and it's so awesome. And yeah, exactly. And we have a really sweet block of people, on our little block, and and just getting to know the houses and next to me and across the street. And but it I just, so now it's like, oh, everything's okay. And part of me was like, well, I can just sit and walk and sit and walk and sit and walk and sit and walk. And then part of me was like, well, somebody asked me to join a chorus or two, and then I was like, that's not really Dharma, but like maybe it makes beauty in the world. And then two of my neighbors, I'm also kind of modulating like how much do I want to engage in worldly, I guess on a moment. I feel like maybe the previous answer kind of answered some of my questions. Well, two of my neighbors are going through a big transformation from having done pretty bad things. So and I sort of, have been finding this out gradually and trying to be like, those wholesome qualities of witnessing that were described. In general, so far, they're really wonderful people, but I wonder, I just, when they say certain things, how much to normalize, like, wow, that's a really wholesome choice because it's not as bad as blah, blah, blah. Or should I just be like, well, maybe we shouldn't really hang out when you're involved in this or that, so yeah, it's this thing of like moment by moment, how much to engage and how.
Yeah, I mean, I think the gist of that makes sense to me, and probably Michelle, and the details, of course, do matter, and our various, realities that we're in. But I think that to me, it sounds like this quintessential, unanswerable, but but totally important navigation for us, as lay people in the world. If you have, just this sense of where we make decisions and why do we make the decisions we make around kind of seclusion and developing our practice in that way, and engagement and developing our practice in that way, and where are the places where those are kind of in like feel supportive of one another, where do they start to feel like one might be detrimental to the other. And there's not often, it's like the places where that's clear are obvious, and the places where it's not clear are challenges in our lives, so it sounds like a very healthy process that you're involved in, and it's just something that you have to be discerning about. I think you're already this sense of like appreciating how quickly the momentum to attending and overvaluing other people's needs and other people's sense of what they want from us, how the momentum that can build, and how hard it is to say no, to be more restrained, to be more pulled back, to not feel responsible for what everyone's needs of you, while at the same time wanting to be generous and kind and connected and compassionate and a part of your community that feels, healthy and wholesome, and where are the places where being engaged feels supportive, and as you're saying, like you're cultivating something beautiful and wholesome. It's like a moment by moment. And I think that you just start to see where are there patterns, where are there patterns where you're like, oh, actually, every time I talk to this person, it always sort of goes in a little bit of like a difficult place, and it feels uncomfortable, and it feels like it's not actually supporting me. It's not really helping them. And I need maybe I need a different kind of boundary here, where is it a sense of, oh, actually, to engage, to be connected to chorus or something, right? Is like, oh, there's parts of that feel supportive to me, and for the time being, it feels like a good balance, and that may change. It doesn't have to be like wherever. This idea that we're going to attain the perfect balance and maintain it is probably, my guess is that's not ever going to happen. I don't know. It hasn't happened for me yet. So I think there's this sense that like, okay, even for people in seclusion and monastics, it's like there's, everyone's negotiating this, So I just think that you're on the right path of like being sensitive to what's helping you and what's not. But that you do also have to be sensitive to whatever internal patterns you have that might tend to undermine our own needs and our own protection and our own places of defending what we've put so much work into developing and growing and cultivating in ourselves. And to not protect that is a tragedy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Ding. Okay.
I think that people say they want to be quiet, but how many people really let go of a certain amount of busyness? As Jesse says, there's a momentum to it. And I think that you're at a very wonderful place, like knowing what it's been like for you the last years. And everything Jesse says, I just think it's so helpful to like just experiment with it. But I'm really encouraging you that I know you want a certain level of awareness and quiet, like that when you feel like it's getting too much, that you have the strength to pull back. And it's not easy. Busy is the norm.
Thank you both.
Yes.
I had put my hand down, but I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, great.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's important. Ooh, thanks everybody. Really good to hear you all. May we all find the perfect balance of that this week. And
Yes.
report on it next Sunday.
Have a good week.
Take care, everyone.